Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I'm your host, Stephen Pynakker, and look who's in the house, Johnny D. Welcome to the program.
Who's in whose house?
That's what I'm saying. Actually, I'm in his house, and we're doing a very special episode of Mormon Book Reviews. And I want to thank you so much, John, for taking the time. We were originally supposed to shoot this yesterday, and scheduling conflicts got in the way with my airfare. And dude, you're traveling later today, and you're taking the time to come on my program. That is so awesome.
Well, it's because you're awesome and cool and so loved, and you're a dear friend. And I'm a huge fan and supporter of the work you're doing. So why wouldn't I make time for you, brother Stephen?
Yeah. Well, a little over a year ago, I wouldn't have imagined any of this happening, and
And now you own this place, basically.
I get embarrassed when I say that, but it's like when I went to Richard Bushman at the Mormon History Association. I told him how well the channel was doing, and then I said, if you ever want to come back on my program, um, you're more than welcome to come on. And looks at me and he says, "Well, this time you'd be doing me the favor." I'm like, "Whoa!" I started blushing, and I was like, "Okay, but now you're embarrassing me, Richard." Nice guy, but yeah, that's really how far it's come, and it's pretty wild. But I'm not here to talk about me, but we did that for your show.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about you,
Oh,
and we're going to
I
talk
don't know about that.
first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened last night. Okay. You helped, Jen, of course, and Allison did an awesome job organizing a special invite only kind of an exclusive crowd of people that were able to celebrate the life of Gerald and Sandra Tander, and also honor them with the new book that came out written by my good friend, Ron Huggins,
Called Lighthouse,
Lighthouse.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a super enjoyable evening.
It was. And it was great you could tell. I mean, I always like to read a room, and just watching Sandra and talking with her, um, and then just seeing how she was responding. And of course, what I really was interesting to me is when the women were speaking, I noticed she was really, really responding to them because she recognized how difficult it is in this world to be a woman and navigate these waters. And so it really was great that Jen and Allison and many of the Lynn Wilder was on, and just it was great, and it was just a nice intimate affair, and I was glad to be part of it, and I was glad to be sitting right with you and Radio Free Mormon, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah, it was super fun. She's a legend. And I said last night that anyone who's ever done anything interesting in Mormon studies, let's just say from the mid 1960s on, stands on the shoulders of Sandra and Gerald Tanner. And something that I didn't mention that I should have is like, there are lots of people trying to do interesting things in this space. There's few that have done it or will do it for 60 years, and she's just a legend in so many ways. People come to me and say, well, how have you done Mormon stories for 18 years? And then Sandra Tanner says to John, hold my root beer,
yeah,
basically.
exactly, yeah, that's right. Great point, great point. That, yeah, she is the goat. I mean, you're the goat too, but I mean, Sandra, I mean, she's on another level, man.
She's on another level. Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually kind of leads me to my first question. And this is actually courtesy of our mutual friend, Randy Bell, who's in the
I'm
house.
already worried. No, I'm excited. I'm honored.
So I'm just going to read what he sent me today.
This is the revenge of Randy Bell coming to John Dehlin.
So, John, we just honored Sandra Tanner in the launch of her book. So when is your book coming out, and do you have a working title?
The longest delay ever should be the title. Like the book that never got written should that be the title? Like I've been wanting to write a book for a while, but I mean, this is a really serious question for me because, yeah, I feel like I've done 1,700 episodes, probably 2,000 hours of content, like more content. Like, yeah, people want it and need it, but at the same time, there's a part of me that thinks like I need to write a book. Like, I need to, approach different spaces and enter into different spaces to reach as many people as possible. And that's just one big gaping hole. On the other hand, I just feel this huge responsibility now that Mormon stories. I mean, can I blow your mind for a second?
Sure, absolutely.
Do you know that Mormon stories viewership and listenership more than doubled in the past year?
Yeah, I watched your numbers, man. Like it's crazy.
Like, and we've been growing exponentially ever since we started.
Mhm.
So to double in our 18th year is crazy. But I was telling RFM last night driving home from the Sandra Tanner event, yeah, just because when we have more viewers and listeners, and even when we get more donations, the weird thing about my mind is I don't go to like, okay, now I can relax. It's more like, wow, I have more of a responsibility than ever to use this platform to alleviate suffering and promote healing and growth. And so it just makes me want to work harder. So I'm like, and it's not like I'm sitting there. It's just I'm just reacting to forces and acting based on my emotion. But I'm just it's almost like I have a compulsion to record interviews.
Mhm.
And that just gets in the way of things I'd really love to do. I would love to do more social commentary, commentary on Mormonism, commentary on Mormon current events. I would love to do more shorts on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. And I would love to write a book. Not to mention what I love to do more retreats and workshops and do coaching. But it's hard to justify any of that when one episode of Mormon Stories can reach 150,000 people. And so, and by the way, like who reads books these days? Now, obviously you do, and a lot of people do, but there's this voice in my head that's like, okay, you can do a podcast that's going to reach 150,000 or 200,000 or 300,000 people over a year or two, or you can write a book that maybe will be read by 10,000 or 20,000 people. And writing's just freaking hard. Like writing is so hard that by the time I get home from doing 2 or 3 interviews in a week, I just don't feel like I have the energy to write a book. But I desperately want to, and that's why this is a really serious and kind of tormenting question. Randy's been kind enough to offer, he's written like a gazillion books, and he's offered to kind of mentor me and coach me. He did that years ago, and I haven't taken him up on it. I almost feel like I need to take a sabbatical to write a book. But then if I take this sabbatical, does my listener viewership bail? Do I lose them?
Yeah.
And then if I hand it over, do we lose our momentum?
Right.
So I honestly feel like I have kind of I don't want to they're kind of golden handcuffs. I have golden handcuffs because of Mormon stories that I feel like keeps me from writing a book, and I hate it. But that's where we are. If help me, dear viewers and listeners. If anyone wants to help me figure out this problem,
Yeah.
I would love your help.
Well, just like, and all they had the different hosts for Jeopardy, trying them out and everything like
I
that.
know.
And it did seem to work. They did find some equilibrium, and people became fans of particular people. And now we got what Ken Jennings. He's going to be the co-host now with Maya Bialek or whatever girl from Blossom, and so there was which of course Alex Trebek passed away. We don't plan on you passing away anytime soon, but there's a model of possibly
Wait, are
working that
you
angle.
offering to take over Mormon Stories for a year, Stephen Pynakker?
No, I'm not, of course, because you're gonna lose like it's a ton of audience. Like, I'm not gonna listen to that evangelical Yahoo.
I mean, yeah, I've thought about that. And like I was trying to build Cara Burrell up to be able to kind of do this. She obviously, I mean, it's a tough space. This is a really tough space. I don't know if it's tough for you. This space is tough to
Yeah.
be in. And Cara, just for her mental health. And so like Gerardo's got a full-time job and Jen's brand new. And I don't know, I don't know who would take over for a year, but if there's someone out there that would that would do a really good job that wouldn't disappoint the listener and the viewer base,
Mhm.
that would be a dream come true.
Mm.
And then I could pay him, and then I could write a book, and then hopefully come back and still have a show to return to.
Hmm.
So I'm open to that. I just don't
Okay.
know who that would be.
So,
Do you have ideas?
well, this is the thing, Randy and I were talking about it, and he said about 80% of the book has been written because you already have the transcripts of all your programs. You can work them. This is the other thing that I observed yesterday is you put together this beautiful tribute to Sandra Tanner, and it was awesome. And it was you kind of showing all the Christ-like attributes that Sandra Tanner has. And you just kind of paralleled the life of Christ with Sandra, not in a blasphemous way, but in a loving way, and showed how, because, honestly, when I came on this program, I went to Christopher Thomas and I said, listen, the goal of my program is to have nothing more than have the love of Christ be shown through me, right? I want Christ to use me. And Sandra Tanner has that same thing. She has Christ operating through her life. And you see that and you recognize that. So I go to you afterwards and you're like, yeah, I took about 10 minutes on this thing. So I know you're
I wasn't
capable.
trying to be glib. That's
No, you
more,
weren't
I
being
was
glib.
confessing my penchant for procrastination.
But that to me shows me that if you can craft something so beautiful in 10 minutes, I know you can craft the book. You can do it.
Yeah. Well, I want to. So you're just making me feel worse
I'm
because
all
I
I'm
already
trying to encourage
I
you.
know.
I
No.
have book in my title.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, no, no. I would love to. So between you and Randy and the viewer and listener audience, let's make a goal for 2022, 2023 to help me figure out this problem
And I think you can do it in
because
90 days.
I
I
I
think you can do
I
it.
believe you. I believe you.
I don't think you
But
need to
is it a
take a year off.
memoir? Is it a memoir? What is it? Is it a memoir? Is it like the a biography of Mormon stories, the podcast? Like I don't even know. Is it about the church's truth claims and what I've
I wouldn't do the church's truth claims.
you wouldn't?
No, because that's what the show is doing. I think it's important to tell your story, but also maybe use this as look. I get Mormon stories all the time. People send me their life stories on and you get them all the time. You showed me when we had breakfast. Like I get this all the time. You have impacted so many people's lives. And I think that it could also be your Mormon story, but also others' Mormon stories, maybe intertwined into it, people's lives who were affected. And so you would tell your story, but you would tell, because I think it's so important. Okay, Rebecca Biblioteca comes on my program. She's this housewife. Nobody knows her. She was a librarian for 15 years at BYU. And now she's been viewed over 10,000 times on my channel and nobody knew who she was. Her Mormon story has been told on my channel. And I think that's the key thing too you provide that vehicle. So it could be a combination of your story and other Mormon stories. And I think I just don't think the idea of like, we don't need another book that goes after Mormon truth claims. There's plenty of evangelical publishers that have put that kind of stuff out to begin with, and secular and atheist and all that. That's just my take. That's just how I feel initially, off the top of my head.
And then honestly, when I hear that in my mind says, who really cares about John's story? Like, and I know that there are a lot of people that are grateful for Mormon stories and they're grateful for me, but I don't in my mind, there's a voice that says nobody's gonna really care.
Okay, so you got to work on that yourself because that's a psychological thing. And there's a lot of people who love you, John. I love you. I think you're awesome. And this is the thing, folks. You don't understand. John Dehlin is a human being, and a lot of people don't realize that because they've either put him on such a high pedestal that he's almost like, oh, John, I've had dinner with you. And it's like you're a freaking movie star here in Utah. But then there's other people that hate you with a passion, and it's like they don't really know John.
Yeah.
You're kind of a caricature for a lot of
Oh,
people,
yeah.
and so everybody just kind of projects onto you.
Hmm.
And so that's why I think it's important that you tell your story because they don't really know you. Like I've gotten to know you because I even told you early on. I said the Lord brought me into your life to be your friend first and foremost. He showed me I was going to be on your program, but to me, the whole point of my program, this endeavor, is relational. And I really mean that. Like I even said, if this interview doesn't see the light of day, I don't care because having this conversation with you is the most important thing. And I really feel that's what the Lord's leading me to do is to be your friend, but also listen, John, people want to hear your story. And I would be honored, I would be excited to read that book. And I'll even try to give it a good book review. But I'll be honest.
Uh-oh. Now I'm less incentivized than before. No, I'm kidding. Well, thank you. That's kind. And that would be, and you're a dear friend. So thank you. That's
Sure.
really kind. And yeah, I do feel like I'm polarizing and I do feel grossly misunderstood by my haters, by my critics, and I do feel misrepresented by many people. And I also hate adoration or worship or like yeah, I appreciate people's gratitude, but I've made mistakes that I would love to talk about because I'm not like I've learned from my mistakes. I'm not proud of my mistakes, but I also feel like I'm not hanging my head low. I feel like I've learned. Me and Margie and our family have benefited. So I would love to tell tell the warts and all kind of story, just so that I can do my best to kind of help people see at least where I've been coming from and what I'm more about. So anyway, we've already talked about me a lot more than I'm comfortable this episode. So how can I start interviewing you now?
Yeah, you could.
I got some questions for you,
Oh, sure,
Steve.
we can go back and forth. That's fine. This is a conversation. This is a conversation.
Welcome to Mormon Stories Today. I'm John Dehlin. Today we're here to interview Stephen Pynakker. Hey, Stephen.
Hey.
That's called my discomfort of. That's why I ask the questions so I don't have to answer them.
Oh, this is great. This is great. This is just so awesome. Well, like I said, okay, folks. So keep your eyes out. You never know what's going to happen.
Hey, has God told you that I'm supposed to write a book? Because that might be an incentive that I need.
Well, I think God told Randy, and then he told me.
Okay, all right, all right. If God says I'm supposed to write a book, then gosh darn it, I'm going to write a book.
Absolutely. So I've got relationships with 14 different publishers, so I can help you out too on that. So, John, thanks for answering that question. I know you're not super comfortable in certain things, but I appreciate it. So I want to kind of go. I know a lot of you, of course, have probably watched John's interview with Rick Bennett, and I'm going to kind of go back in time a little bit and have John's story, but I'm going to take a different tact, okay? Because I want to hear John. First of all, you're raised in the Bible Belt, Katy, Texas. Football is king, and Jesus is Lord, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yep, totally.
and so you're basically a Mormon kid growing up in that world.
Yeah.
I want to know what your interactions were like growing up in a predominantly evangelical Christian fundamentalist world. Just kind of describe to me interactions, and maybe we could go to maybe when you were young and realized, oh, I'm different than everybody else. I'm going to be treated a little differently because I'm not a Baptist or an evangelical.
Oh wow. Oh, I said to you, man, what are we going to talk about that we haven't already talked about? That's a fun question.
Good.
So thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I moved. So born in Boise, lived there a year, lived in Foster City, California, in the Bay Area for a year. Then there was 5 years in Dallas, where I'm just a kid. My social interactions were primary in church and being home. Moved to Houston when I'm 8, and then those elementary school years and junior high years, I had a couple friends that were not religious at all who I played with on my street. But other than church was my social outlet through middle school, along with like middle school athletics. But I wasn't super social. So high school, Katy High School, represented kind of my entrance into any significant non-LDS social arena. And I haven't spent a lot of time reflecting on how difficult that was because, West Memorial Elementary and junior high is just people in my subdivision. But as soon as I go to Katy High School, this is a high school centered in downtown Katy, Texas, which was like a rice farm community that existed back before Civil War times. So there were slaves, you know, working on rice farms in Katy, Texas, pre-Civil War, and as far as I know, and there was still, I don't want to call it a slum, but there was an area in Katy where all the, 100 years ago, where all the slaves lived, and that had just migrated into an area where all the people of color lived in that rice town. Very super segregated. Like my high school, Katy High School, used to have the old drinking fountains that said whites and coloreds, like on the drinking fountain. So there was, first of all, this real undertone of racism. And like athletics, I was on the basketball team. Athletics was where the whites and the blacks, I'll say, white people and black people kind of intermingled, whether it's football or basketball. But other than that, everyone sat at their own table. The black kids sat on their lunch table, and the white kids sat in there, and we didn't intermingle. There were some people of color in my honors high school classes, but that was an exception. Otherwise, you would have had no chance of speaking to a black person, even though a third of the school were African Americans or Latinos. So really racially segregated growing up. But then also there was this weird combination of local natives that had thick Southern accents and that had been there for multiple generations. And then people from the oil boom of the 70s and 80s, tons of people moving in from all over the world, building up the suburbs as these oil companies were expanding in the 80s. And, but at Katy High School, it was the legacy families that had lived in Katy for a long, long time that were kind of the highest social status. And I had no clue about any of these dynamics until I started going to school and I realized which are the wealthy families that had influence and pull in the community, in the athletic program, in the academics, in the management of the town. And I realized I was a complete outsider nobody. Like whether kids running for class office or student body president or who gets to be quarterback or even who starts on the basketball team could be heavily influenced by these powerful entrenched families. And these powerful entrenched families were largely evangelicals.
Okay.
There was Katy Baptist Church, there were other, evangelical churches around. Um, and that's where all the power was. And I think my first real confrontation with that was when I kind of developed a crush on this girl named Stephanie Thompson. And her dad he played basketball for Katy High School, a generation before. He was a rich guy, big house, oil guy. And Stephanie likes me. And she was like a cute girl, played volleyball. I'm like, whoa, Stephanie Thompson likes me. Like, whoa, this is going to be good. You know what I mean? And so I start getting to know her. We start sending notes or whatever you did back then. And then she tells her parents about me. And they say to Stephanie, you can't date him. Cut it off.
Because they knew you were a Mormon?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she just cuts it off. And I'm like, what happened? And it's just like, I can't, my parents won't let me go out with you. So that was, that I don't want to sound like, I'm straight, white, whatever, privileged male in a million ways.
Mhm.
So I don't want to make it sound like I was abused or like had it really bad. But that was discrimination. If there's discrimination, that counts, right? I'm not going to date you because your religion.
Absolutely.
Imagine saying I'm not going to date you because you're black, or I'm not going to date you because you're white, or I'm not, that's discrimination, and I felt it, and it was painful, and it was painful to always be on the outside of those power circles within. And that wasn't the first time. I also had my closest friend Joey Dollins. We were in honors classes together, and we would all sit by each other and play together and have fun together. He was a charismatic Christian.
Okay.
I want to remember the name of that church, but it was like a local, highly charismatic church that was smaller.
Okay.
And Joey Dollins and his family were a part of it. And we were the closest friends for probably 3 years. And then his parents were like, you got to get away from that guy. So I lost like my best friend. And he never really said it. He just kind of ghosted me a little bit towards the end there. And so that was painful. And that's one of the just really bizarrely compelling and powerful things about a high demand religion is that persecution reinforces in some ways a positive identity, because at the same time my church is saying, oh, you're a Saturday's warrior, you were one of God's elect, you were valiant in the pre-existence, that's why you're Mormon, and you were sent to the earth to usher in the coming of Jesus Christ, and you are one of the noble and great ones. And then you get your patriarchal blessing when I'm 16 or whatever, and it's like, you will rise in the morning of the first resurrection, and you will, I'm like, oh man, I'm one of God's chosen. And like all these loser evangelicals, like, yeah, they think I'm lame, but joke will be on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So like it actually made me feel in a weird way better about myself. Like that persecution kind of a cruise to blessings and additional worthiness and valiance. It's just a trial that I can overcome and become even stronger. So it wasn't like I was running around high school sad, and I was student body president. You know what I mean? I became captain of the varsity basketball team. I wasn't going to let those fetchers drag me down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I'll just also say this, that I remember. Are you feeling something?
Oh, no, no, I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good.
I also will just say that I remember when Katie Baptist, whatever, they had a movie night
Oh, God makers.
where it was Mormons and other cults, you
Oh,
know what
okay.
I mean? And they show the God makers, and they probably did that multiple times, but I remember one time specifically I ride by and I see the thing and I'm like, Mormons and other cults. What? Cult? Like, I'm like, no way, we're not a cult, you know, like we're the one true church. Like, you guys are. So I remember going to high school and finding my religious friends and having debates with them about like original sin and Adam and Eve, and what's a Christian, what's not a Christian, um, what Christ did and didn't do, who has authority, does authority matter, is the Bible perfect, is it not? And I started getting into those sorts of discourses in high school, and I felt like they, just the idea that the Bible's perfect, because Mormon had seeded in my mind that the Bible was flawed and the Book of Mormon was perfect. And so I'm like, these people are crazy. They're going to say the Bible's perfect. Like, Judas dies explicitly in two different ways. They can't even get the words on the sign at the crucifixion right. All four versions of the Gospels have different wording on the sign above.
And these are things you knew about then?
Totally.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Because I was regional scripture chase champion as a
Okay.
freshman. I did all 4 years of seminary. I hardly ever missed. I was super devout Mormon kid. I was Nephi, and I read the scriptures. And so I would read the Bible and I would find discrepancies. And I would, kind of like a mini Bart Ehrman, but just like a super mini Bart Ehrman. And I'm just like, the Bible's got all sorts of problems and it
Mhm.
contradicts itself. And I would bring this up to my evangelical friends and they'd be like, nope, the Bible's perfect. And I'm like, you people are like blind followers. And of course, I didn't see myself that way, but I also wasn't, because during that same time period, I'm thinking, I remember very specifically, and I probably told the story before. I remember very specifically thinking, huh, so like I think my church is true, but they think their church is true, and these other people think their church is true. Well, why are we what we are? And then I thought, well, it's probably because our parents taught us that. And so then I thought about, okay, if Mormonism's true, what percentage of the world is Mormon? And I divided the number of Mormons in the world, it was probably 5 million at the time or whatever, by the number of people in the world. And I got like less than one half of 1%. And even then, I was just thinking, like, man, God, like, okay, you say narrow is the gate and few there be that find it, but that's a pretty awful success rate. If this is God's one true church, like, I don't know. That feels a little bit lucky. It feels a little bit fortunate that I just happened to be born into the one true church. But I'm going with it because it makes me, like, I mean, I didn't mind feeling like I was better than everybody, and that was a fundamental part of my Mormonism. Because even though I was hurt by and disappointed by the judgment of all my evangelical Christian friends, I thought I was better than all of them. And I
Yeah.
was taught that we were better than all of them, that
And
their
you're
churches were broken and fallen. And, you know,
yeah, and you're persecuted. It's showing like, hey man,
yeah,
I'm a warrior. I'm in the battleground, and I'm defending the faith. And so it's a great feeling to have in one sense. But a question I have for you is, what does a debate with an evangelical in high school look like? Would you guys yell at each other, scream? Would it be civil? Just kind of, how
no,
did
I
that
would
go?
never yell,
Would
but it
they
would,
yell at you? Okay,
no,
good.
no, no. It would be like, this is typical John Dehlin. It's like, hey, so what does it mean to be saved? And they'd be like, well, it means, you go to church and you hear a really inspiring thing, and then you stand up and you say, I believe, and you go up to the front and you do whatever it is.
Yep.
And then from that point forward, you're saved. And I'd be like, huh. So like it doesn't matter what you do after that, you're going to heaven. Yep, doesn't matter what you do. And I'm like, well, what if you kill somebody? And they're like, well, you wouldn't kill somebody if you'd been saved. And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, I bet there's people that have been saved who then killed somebody. Well, maybe they weren't saved. We'd go around and around, and then I'd be like, well, like really, God's just that one moment, and then like you're good. But then I'd be like, well, what about all the people who live in India? You know what I mean? And then they'd give me some answer like, well, they're screwed. Or and I'm like, really? So God's screwing all those people, you know? And then it's like, okay, well, no, because then they'd say something like, well, there's a way that they can feel the light of Christ in their heart and accept Christ even though they don't know his name. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So like they've never heard of Jesus or the Bible, but just because like something in their heart, they're like, what? Like, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so it would be like that. And it would usually just end like, okay, well, thanks for sharing. And
Mhm.
I don't remember it ever be like that.
Okay. Yes.
Just civil, playful dialogue that when it got a little bit heated, maybe we'd just get distracted and go do something else.
Did an evangelical ever show genuine interest in your faith?
like like to
Like,
the point of wanting to take
just no, just like
lessons.
really wanted to know, like, what do you believe and what did like about Jesus and God? I mean, just actually rather than try to convert you, but actually just were they did they ever show any interest in your faith at all?
There might have been a few. There
Okay.
might have been a few. Like my friend Chad McMillan, who was an offensive lineman at University of Texas, he was kind of semi-Christian, and we would have he came to church with me. I brought him to church. I think I attended Katy Baptist Church at one point or
Okay.
another, probably because of a girl I was dating. I don't know. Um, and I think I had some genuine dialogue with some where they showed interest in Mormonism,
Okay.
and but I don't remember if they brought up God makers like questions or criticisms. I don't know that they ever really landed with me. I probably would have either just tuned them out or dismissed them because I hadn't been really exposed to kind of legitimate challenges to Mormon truth claims at that point. Or if I had my guard up.
Okay. Okay. So you had mentioned that you recall possibly attending Katy Baptist. Did you
I definitely attended Katy
so
Baptist
tell
Church at
me
least once.
how
Yeah.
many different Christian churches did you visit while while you were living in Katy growing up? Did you go to other friends' did you go to that charismatic church you were talking about?
No, I never went to Joey's church. I felt afraid and I
Okay.
felt like they wouldn't want me there. I don't know that I attended anything other than Katy Baptist Church, honestly.
And do you remember having any impressions of what you felt when you attended a service?
I mean, I think I felt like it was kind of cool, like different.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, have you ever heard of Chuck Swindoll?
Oh yeah. Mhm.
You have?
Mhm.
So my dad, I grew up with my dad. So my dad, he experienced some church discipline in my middle school years. And he was in a state calling at the time, was disciplined, and he was never the same after that.
Hmm.
Wasn't excommunicated or anything, but just had some church discipline, and it was kind of public and embarrassing. And that always like felt wrong to me that he was so publicly shamed and that our whole family was kind of marked by that experience in a very public shaming way. And I don't know what else it was, but my dad was always kind of a Jesus Mormon.
Okay.
Have I ever talked about my dad? Have you ever heard me talk about my dad and Jesus?
I've watched so much of your stuff. I'm sure it's in the memory bank
Okay, but it's
somewhere.
not fresh
I
in your
would
mind.
like to hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so my dad was the kind of guy, I think Randy will appreciate this. My dad was the kind of guy where if you're driving down the road and somebody's car he pulls over and he helps them with their car. And if if someone in the ward needs to move, my dad's there, you know? And if somebody needs help, you drop everything to help them. And that is my dad's still alive. That is my dad. And he would always bear a super strong testimony of the Savior. It was just Jesus, the Savior.
Mm,
That's
mm,
my dad. It still is my dad. To the point where when I actually got my mission call, he was like, "Hey, I need you to know a couple things." And I was like, oh, "Okay." He's like, "The temple ceremony, not a good thing. You're not. I'm." He told me. He said, "I never enjoyed the temple. It was weird, and I really wish the temple was a place you could get edified and uplifted, and instead, it's boring and weird."
Okay.
I'd never heard him talk like that before my mission, so that was surprising to me. But the other thing is when I'm in the MTC, and I'm jumping ahead, when I'm in the MTC, Ezra Benson, my cousin, is prophet, and he's on his flood the earth with the Book of Mormon thing. And so I'm like calling home for whatever reason at a dental thing, and I'm like, Dad, the Book of Mormon. And he says to me all over the phone while I'm in the MTC, "Son, I have to be honest with you. I've never really liked the Book of Mormon. I'm a New Testament guy."
It's great.
I'm like, "What?
Wow.
What, Dad?" Like, at the time, I'm like, "Dad, that's what? Have you heard the prophet? Like, what are you doing?" And he's just like, "I'm just being honest. I've never really. I'm a New Testament Mormon."
Wow.
I was like, "Huh." Um, so that always stuck with me. That like there was something that there are rings of kind of what's important. And I learned from my dad that what's really important is being kind and serving people. That doesn't mean he never got mad or made mistakes, but serving others, I kind of mentioned this yesterday in my thing with Sandra. Like Jesus, the Savior, deeply shapes me and my character and how I look at life. And that's why I don't, people want to call me an atheist sometimes or even anti Christian. I don't think of myself that way. I think of myself as someone who whose identity is forged in the similitude of Jesus, because I incorporated this idea that material possessions aren't what life's about, making money isn't what life's about, fame and fortune, laying up treasures is not what life's about. What life's about is alleviating suffering, sticking up for the marginalized, and doing good in the world. And that's all that matters. And so, later, even when I graduate from college, I'm like, what do I want to do that? How do I get paid to do that? And maybe I'll be I would for a while I was looking into being a military pastor. What are they called? A
Chaplain.
chaplain.
Oh,
Like maybe I'll be a chaplain.
interesting.
But then like, I don't know, like I don't want to be in the military. And so even while I was at Bain and then at Arthur Anderson and then ultimately at Microsoft, the whole time I'm like, how do I spend my life helping people? Software is fine for now, but I got to find a way to alleviate suffering, promote healing and growth. And all of that comes from my Christian upbringing.
Hmm.
So, I care about truth. And so I have always asked hard questions about God and Jesus when I was a Mormon and now. And I only want to believe in something that's true. So I'm not like, I still have skepticism in me, but I think it's healthy skepticism. But to say I'm like against Christ or against Jesus or anti Christian, I'm not. I deeply admire and respect who Jesus is. I feel like my whole trajectory of life is informed, is a extension of the Christianity that I was raised with and Mormonism to some degree. And that comes in large part from my dad and probably from the things I took away from my Mormon upbringing.
Okay. Uh, it's great that you're talking this way because you had talked about how earlier your friends went to you and said, "Well, you feel this conviction, and you go up to this you do altar call, and then you ask Jesus into your heart, and then you're saved." And because I'll ask Christians, "What is a born again experience?" And they'll explain. They'll basically tell that that's the pattern. And I always go to them and say, there's just one little problem with that. That's 19th century Christianity. None of that's in the Bible, including asking Jesus into your heart.
Mm,
And so I look at it this way. In their mind, that's being born again, but it's not in the Bible. It's 19th century, just like Mormonism is, right?
hmm
And so I have a view of salvation is that, what are their fruits? Are they exhibiting the fruits of the Spirit? And if I see the fruits of the Spirit operational in a person's life, to me, that's what we go by. And so this is gonna be controversial, but I see the fruits, and I think you have a ministry, and I think that the Lord is using you. And I'm not here to go and say, John Dehlin, you need to go up and do that altar call and ask Jesus into your heart, because I think that's a very superficial view of Christianity. I don't want an easy faith, man. I want a hard faith. I want a challenged faith. And that's what you've been doing. And it just sounds to me as you're telling your story, it's like, okay, yeah. And it reminds me a lot of myself too. You know, I would challenge pastors. I would challenge, oh, don't go there, don't ask those questions. Because there's a very similar dynamics going on with evangelicalism as well. So I think that, when I say the Lord brought me here and all this kind of stuff, I think that, and I told you before, I said, John, I think you're going to be a pastor one day. And in one sense, pastor doesn't mean that you're going to be a pastor of a church. You are, in one sense, functioning in a pastoral capacity. And so I kind of look at it as that you're doing, in my mind, a Christian work. And so I just want to honor you, because there, and this is the thing, man. I have evangelicals, oh, John Dehlin, he's progressive, or he's gay affirming, and they shut you off, man. And that, quite frankly, pisses me off, because it's unfair to you. And I think evangelicals out there that criticize John Dehlin, you don't know this man, you don't know his heart. And if you spent some time with him, you would see the fruits. And I think that's important that people hear that.
Well, I appreciate it.
I'm
Thank you,
not,
Stephen.
look, God's the ultimate judge.
Yeah.
He decides, but that's how I look at it.
Well, thank you. I got a little chills. I used to associate that with the Holy Ghost. So maybe that's the Holy Ghost, or maybe that's just my neurochemicals, but it feels good either way. So thank you. Two things there I'm dying to respond.
Okay.
So you said it's a conversation.
Absolutely.
Number one is like, I'm thinking, like, just at the Sandra Tanner thing, there's some people coming up to me who are kind of like, you're a little bit LGBT friendly for me. I'm like, first of all, what did Jesus ever say about the LGBT question? Ever? One word. There's not one word. He never said a word about it.
Yep.
Never. And then the other thing is like, you really think that if Jesus were here in 2022 and he's interacting with LGBT people, he's not loving them and supporting them and being affirming? I mean, I don't know. Like, Jesus wasn't about like this behavior is good and this behavior is bad to the average person. He was critical of like the hypocrites, right? He was critical of the priests and the judges and the lawyers and the people in power, but he wasn't running around calling out the traits or characteristics or even sins or mistakes of the normal person, not at all.
Oh, no.
So I'm just wondering what Bible these evangelicals or these Christians are reading.
Yeah.
Like, what are you basing this on? Like, I want to also touch another thing, but do you want to respond to that or?
Well, that's a great point, John, because obviously, and I look at it this way: there are things about the LGBTQ movement that I don't like or agree with. I think it's politicized. But I'm going to divorce that, because this isn't about LGBTQ as a movement. It's about LGBTQ as
People.
individual
People, yeah.
right? And I'm on a one-on-one level with folk, you see, and that is about relationship. So, yeah, Jesus would embrace the LGBT people, and he would love them, and he would not be holding signs. God hates F's, right? That
Yeah.
and the Westboro Baptists do. Um, and a lot of these ministries will hold the same signs, similar signs during general conference. I don't have much use for those people. They're just full
Yeah.
of hate.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a spirit there against gay people that is not Christian at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Because anyone who's, if there's a large percentage of any population that feels driven to want to take their lives, those are the people you love and show compassion and kindness to, not stick your boot on their neck and make it harder.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah, and that's the abuse that we're seeing within American Christianity. I'm very concerned about the direction that it's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
It's being used to hurt people, and also to try to control people, and that's very scary to me. So yeah, evangelicals, we need to like I was talking to Jeff McCullough of Hello Saints. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to get too specific in my criticism because I don't want to get political. But I said, evangelicals have fallen for so much BS that they believe from particular individuals that they really believe is to be true. And these are outside of Christianity. So we'll leave it at that. And I said, why in the hell are we so concerned evangelicals about Mormons when it's a mess on our side, a complete disaster?
Yeah.
We need Jesus.
Yeah.
We need Jesus.
Yeah. Amen. Okay. And then the second thing I wanted to say is going back to being saved and having a ministry and that sort of thing. I don't, I feel, I said yesterday with Sandra Tanner that I've been traumatized by
Yes.
Mormonism. And honestly, I think to be human is to be traumatized. I don't care
Yes.
what I was raised in. I think I probably would have felt traumatized by almost anything I was raised in. So this isn't a dig on Mormonism per se,
Mhm.
but I definitely feel like I felt betrayed by my church. And so because of that, my hesitancy to do God's speech or even Jesus speech or to believe or trust anything fully, I'm scarred by that because I just don't want to be fooled again, right?
Mhm.
And so on the one hand, you don't hear me doing a lot of God talk
And yeah.
or Jesus talk. On the other hand, I don't ever feel like my goal with Mormon stories has been to take people's faith away from, let's just say, good God belief, right?
Mhm.
Or to take people away from good Jesus belief that is about kindness and love. I do want to ask the hard questions so we're not believing wrong things or bad things. But so I mean, this is a long way of saying while you don't hear me framing a lot of my life in terms of God and Jesus talk, I've already told you how Jesus informs pretty much everything I do.
Mhm.
As far as God goes, like I can remember the walk where I'm like in Logan, it's 2004, 2005,
Mhm.
and I'm listening to my iPod probably before the iPhone even came out, and I'm listening to like, oh, there's this thing called a podcast, you know what I mean? And I'm listening to Mike Norton's podcast called The Church Is Not True, very subtly named podcast. There was another one called Catholic Mormon. There were a couple Mormon themed podcasts before mine, and I'm listening to that. And, if Joseph Smith had a theophany or whatever, I had one.
Mhm.
I had one like walking, doing my 4 mile, 5 mile walk every morning in North Logan, where it was like, it was almost as if, well, I didn't hear a voice, but it was almost as if I heard a voice
Mhm.
saying, you need to do this.
Mhm.
And so I don't call that God, not because I know what it was or wasn't, but just because like I'm traumatized to ever use that word. But like, does that really matter? Like, if you say you believe that God told you this or that, or you've been inspired for this or that, and I just say I felt very strongly that I should. One of the reasons I hate the atheist agnostic believer divide is because I don't know how much of a difference there is between the feelings you get that motivate you and the feelings that I get that motivate me.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of the same feelings, and maybe you're comfortable using a certain set of nouns or adjectives to describe it. I use different nouns or adjectives because of the trauma I've experienced. But like, I don't like the term atheist or agnostic to then be a divider where we're having different experiences. And, even when I think about kind of my conversations with Randy, like, I don't I am not the person that just reduces every experience down to neurochemicals. That's just not me. It never has been. That doesn't mean I'm in a hurry to ascribe a divine source to everything that I feel, but I do have an openness to free flowing energy and to a bigger driver of, I mean, a creative force. There's clearly a creative force, clearly there's something that that was moving temporal existence towards the creation of life and then the evolution of life. That is a creative force. Now, whether you want to call that random, which is weird and I mean, I can't say it's unlikely. Maybe it's all random, but to me, that's just as weird and as ridiculous as that there's some power of force. And I've been saying this since the beginning of Mormon stories. Now, when I was a believing Mormon or semi-believing Mormon, I just decided to call that God. Whatever it is that like is making the human species or just the animal kingdom and then the human species advance, learn more, advance in technology, grow, develop. I'm going to call that God because there's something going on, right?
Mhm.
And I've never lost that. I just, I don't like having to pick a side of like, I'm pro God or I'm an atheist. I don't like either of those. I don't like either of those because I think they're polarizing and I think they those sorts of categories tend to divide more than they unite. And so I'm interested in just saying, you call it what you call it, I call it, I choose to not give it a name, but let's just vibe in the fact that we both are rejoicing in the beautiful creation that is, and that there's some meaning and purpose that makes me do what I do.
Mhm.
I heard something like a voice. I don't know what it was exactly, but does it matter if you call it God and I'm like, I don't know? Does that matter? Is God going to keep me out of heaven because I didn't call it God?
Mm.
Right?
Mhm.
Or if I'm serving people, but I don't do it in Jesus's name, but Jesus is what informed my service, is that keeping me out? Like, I'm not interested in any theology
Yeah.
any God that's like that picky about who gets to live with him for eternity versus not into that kind of God. If there's a God that's like doing that, I'm out, right?
Yeah.
But if we can just dwell in a space to where we call it slightly different things, but we're all unified in the values and the meaning and the purpose and the wonder and the celebration of life and joining in the alleviation of suffering and the promotion of health and well-being, can't we just do that and not let religion be something that makes friends feel like they're not close and
Yeah.
connected?
Yeah.
That I'm
No,
just kind of going off,
no,
but
but
I'm
I actually appreciate you saying that, John, because this is the thing. Even Christians out there who might be critical of maybe what John just said, and maybe critical of what I said. This,
what would they
well,
criticize?
because I should be telling you, John, it's either you turn or burn, repent, you need Jesus, right? That's what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's what evangelicals are saying, that criticize me. You're saying that I'm here to witness to you and I'm supposed to convert you. Well, Lord told me early on, you don't do the converting, he does. In other words, and it's not even about conversion. It's about the idea is that you just allow him to work through you and don't try to get the arguments right and try to make these points and look, oh, I showed John this and I was able to show, because I think there's a lot of Christians who would love to have this opportunity and they can just freaking, open up the Bible and start preaching at you. Well, you ain't listening to that because you know that they're coming in here with an agenda. They're here to, uh, they want to convert you. And my idea is, well, wait, um, look at what John is doing and how you're helping people. And what you said about alleviating suffering. Why can't we all, even if we disagree with each other on theology and religious views, why can't we all jump on the idea of alleviating suffering and helping people and just working together in that sense? Why can't we go and volunteer at the Sikh temple when they give out food to people all the time? Beautiful religions that do good things. I think we should focus on those positive attributes as well. Allow Christ to operate through your life wherever you're at. And this is the other thing too, John. He's like, look, I was an atheist for a long time. Okay. Um, I know what it's like to be traumatized. And I know what it's like to be angry with God and be hurt. I went further than you ever did. Right. And so I know the pain and all that I went through. And it was traumatic, and this whole endeavor is part of the healing process. Even when I was first starting the channel, the idea of it being a ministry, and I use that word very, I don't want people to think, but it is kind of a ministry because what happens off camera is kind of the ministerial aspect of the program, where people reach out to me and tell me their stories. And look, dude, part of the thing I look at it is this way: you had no intention of starting a ministry, and I didn't have any intention of starting a ministry. I'm using these words just to because of how we're helping people, right? And that's why I think that's when where I believe the Lord's hand is in something is that you didn't plan it, He did, and He will look where I've come from. What you've done in your time period is tremendous. Even in the past year is remarkable. What's happened with my channel? It's pretty amazing, and it was through no effort on my part. It was, I mean, I made an effort and all this kind of stuff. Yes, I put in the hours of study, not knowing. that it would lead to the channel. This is the thing. Like there was no planning of doing this. Originally, I was going to do a low carb channel to help people lose weight, right? But it was that bookcase that I looked at that kept on. I was, wait a second, I could do something with that. So that's where I think that's where God's in the matter in my in my worldview, is because you see, I live in a Christian community and we have all these people. I have a ministry. I have a ministry, and it's just kind of this little, they're not really doing anything. They just like to brag about this ministry that I have, and they're not really doing anything, and it's not growing and it's not flourishing or anything. And it's really not, it's their ministry, but it's not God's ministry. And as long as they think it's their thing, then it's going to be their thing. I think it's because you didn't go in with this. You didn't know where this was going to lead to.
No,
I didn't know where this was going to lead
no.
to. So I look at it, that's kind of like that's the God part. Does that make sense to you?
Does. And every year, like I didn't know, first of all, when I left Microsoft in 2004, podcast didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
But I left Microsoft because I wanted to be a part of the solution. So like it was literally like that Indiana Jones movie where he's got to take that step into the darkness, thinking he's might fall, but then the tile reaches up to meet his foot. And then he takes the next step thinking he's going to fall and the tile raises up. That's exactly how it was for me, because it was like, okay, I'll move to Logan, I guess, and leave a couple $100,000 a year and all my stock options behind to make what, $15 an hour with 4 kids and a wife who doesn't work outside the home. Okay, I guess I'll do it. I don't know what I'm going to do. So like I moved to Logan, and then like I go to Sunstone, right? And then I meet all these cool people and I'm like, whoa, these are cool people. Like, whoa. And then, and then I learn about podcasts, and then I buy the microphone, and then I start one. Even then I'm like, I'll never be able to make money off of this. I'll just have to like do this as a side gig. And then slowly over time, I get my PhD and people start donating to the nonprofit. And yeah, I'm able to do it full time now. Every step of the way, I felt like there was a power, there was like wind behind my sail. And I always thought of that as, I mean, again, I'm traumatized. So do I go, that's divine?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just go, I don't know, but there's something. Because like every step I've taken towards trying to do good, informed by the teachings of Jesus, by the way,
Right.
and Mormonism,
Yep.
the influence and the power, the donors or the talent or Gerardo or whoever raise up and help me do it.
Mhm.
So I guess I want to say to your Christian friends, and sometimes I've wanted to say this to you or Randy or others, like, how am I not already saved? In the sense, how am I not already converted? How am I not? What what is it that is needed here,
Mm.
other than I add the word Jesus to what I'm doing?
Mhm.
Like, is that really what God cares about? That I say the word Jesus when I do these things? That I call myself a Christian? Or does he care that I'm just informed by that and doing it and literally dedicating? I work I work 18 hours a day on this cause. Literally, I sleep 6 hours on average, and the rest of the time I'm doing this. Like, what else, Christians? What else do you need? Like,
Mhm.
really? No, and I'm not saying, I'm not trying to defend me.
Right.
This is a theological question. Like, if I'm literally trying to take people out of a harmful cult that hurts people, and I know it's also a high demand religion and it's also a beautiful religion, but from my perspective, the Mormon church was started by a charlatan sexual predator who probably had good intentions too. And it's a big jumble mess. But the difference between David Koresh and Warren Jeffs and Jim Jones and Keith Raniere, he's a lot more like them than he is different from them in terms of how he ran things. So if I'm spending my life helping people wake up from at least the intellectual bondage of that, but maybe the spiritual bondage of that, and then giving them the freedom to then decide other things, including interviewing people like you and Chris Thomas
Yep.
and other Christians to say, hey, if this is, and Sandra, like, hey, if this is the path for you, follow it. Like,
Mhm.
if that's not saved, if that's not worthy of God's love and respect and like his presence if I die, what What is the criteria?
You know, it's
I'm not.
yeah.
I want you to actually answer
Okay,
that
so
question.
it's really
Like,
interesting because you
what do
said,
I need?
well, you say the term Christian. Well, the term Christian was the name that was given to us by outsiders. So that's a descriptive thing. But also the other idea of Christian is like people would say, well, how could you call yourself a Christian and be a Democrat? Or how can you, this is the world I grew up in. How can you be, and even as a kid, I said, well, wait, a Christian is somebody who follows the teachings of Christ. That's the basic definition. And I said, so you can call yourself a Christian because you follow the teachings of Christ and still be not the evangelical Bible thumper that that you think is the only true Christian. So there are progressive Christians. There are different attributes of Christianity that are different. The dominant strain here in the United States tends to be the evangelical one. That is the world that I identify with, but I also recognize that it's so full of shortcomings. So this is the thing, how can I go and say, look, I look at it this way. I don't go to people and say, well, yeah, I think you're a Christian or you're not. I just say, okay, what are the fruits, right? And like I said earlier, I see fruits of the Spirit operating in your life. So that gives me like enough to say, okay, I see enough there that I think that there are Christ-like attributes operating in your life. I can't go and say John Dehlin is going to hell because he didn't have the salvation experience that I had or that you had, because I think that's unfair to you, and it doesn't jive with me anymore. That kind of stuff.
But I'm kind of wondering why that's even in the realm of consideration for a Christian. Like, you know,
What do you mean by that?
like like really, like people like I'm faithful to my wife, Margie. She'll tell you I'm a devoted husband. I'm a devoted father.
Okay.
Like
Well, I'll tell you
I
what they
live
would.
my life trying to alleviate suffering
Right.
and pursue truth and to help people heal and grow.
Right.
And and when I think I'm being honest here, when I've read the Bible, I've read
Mhm.
the New Testament, when I have studied the words of Jesus and the gospel of Jesus and what he's about, what is he about? He's about forgiving people. He's about having empathy for people. He's about serving. He's about clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, helping the poor, sticking up for the sad and the broken and the marginalized, standing up to power, eschewing materialism, and then spending your life uh, trying to create peace. Now, maybe you could say I'm unchristlike in the sense that sometimes you could say I sow dissension and not peace. But Jesus didn't always sow
Yeah,
peace.
yeah, that's right.
Jesus kind of kicked ass sometimes, and surely was polarizing and contentious. So if I'm no, I guess I'm no better or worse than Jesus in that regard, in terms of like we're talking about hard things that people feel passionate about, but like what is it about the ministry and teachings and the gospel of Jesus that I'm not living? Now, I'm not saying I'm
Okay.
a great human,
So
but I'm just saying, what am I missing? Christians, like, what am I missing?
okay, this is the question. This would be the question: is you talked about the life and teachings of Christ. What are your thoughts about what he did for us at the cross?
Well, so that's an I don't know.
Okay.
That's well, okay, no. Let's say what I know.
Okay.
What I know is, and I said this about Sandra. What is the similarity between Jesus and Sandra? They both gave their life for the teachings of Jesus. Sandra's worked 60 of her 80 years um she spent living her understanding of the gospel of Jesus Christ. She gave her life for Jesus.
Hmm.
Jesus gave his life, sacrificed his very life to stand for what he was teaching.
Hmm.
So to me, at a minimum, that's what he did on the cross. He died. He cared and believed so much about what he stood for that he was willing to give his life for that. Now that is amazing. Like that is, and I'm trying to do that. When I gave up my stock options and my $200,000 a year, I'd be a I'd probably be worth 5 or 10 million right now if I'd stayed at Microsoft for sure, maybe more.
Hmm.
That's me trying to do what Jesus did,
Mhm.
walk away from the money and pursue. So like and me getting my PhD in psychology and then following this ministry now for 18 years or 20, depending on how you count. That's me trying to give my life for these same sorts of things. So anyway, at the cross, Jesus gave his life for the things he stood for.
Mhm.
And that's at a minimum what his sacrifice means to me. And let me just say, if he was just a mortal, if he was not the son of God in any unique superpower sort of way, and he was just a dude who got nailed up to a cross and experienced all that pain and suffering without the added energy of a superhero, you know? Because if Superman gets beat up, yeah, it looks painful, but he's Superman.
Mhm.
So is it really a big deal? Because he's going to heal and then he's going to be a Superman again.
Mhm.
But if that's the only life Jesus had, and if he really felt those nails in his hands and the sword in his side and the thorns on his head, and that blood that he spilt was his last, that to me, that's a bigger sacrifice than if some superhero takes a 1.5 day nap and then he's back being a superhero again with even more glory. So to me, it doesn't diminish the sacrifice of Jesus if he was just mortal. To me, it makes it more amazing and even more respectful.
Mhm.
So I know that's good. I know these words are going to sound super blasphemous,
Mhm.
but I'm operating in the world of like, we don't know. Nobody knows. Like, believe me, anyone who thinks you know what Jesus was about, you're just like the Mormons that know what Joseph Smith was about. We all have emotion based opinions about our worldview. And if you think your emotions are more valid than a Mormon's emotions or a Muslim's emotions or a Hindu's emotions, you haven't really thought deeply enough to realize you should have epistemic humility, which is you don't totally know. You are just really persuaded by your emotions. And that's the most, and atheists are exactly the same way, Randy. Atheists are persuaded by their emotions, right?
Mhm.
They have just as little right to have certitude as anybody else, right?
Absolutely.
We're all operating on our emotions. Now, I do think that there's a value to science of gathering
Mhm.
evidence and like trying to act in a way where data supports. So I'm pro science, but of course there's corruption and flaws and problems in science too. But anyway, all I'm saying is like nobody knows what happened after Jesus died, in my opinion. And there's accounts of him doing miraculous things, but there's accounts of Warren Jeffs doing her miraculous things, and there's accounts of Joseph Smith healing the sick in Nauvoo, and there's accounts of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh and Sai Baba levitating from the ground in India. And there's more people than follow Mormonism that say they saw Sai Baba levitate and will bear their testimonies of that. So, what do we do with all that?
Mhm.
My answer is you have epistemic humility.
Mhm.
You believe what you believe. That's
Yeah.
fine. I'm not trying to say Christians don't believe in Christ, but I'm saying don't tell me you know.
Right.
Don't tell me you know.
I agree with you entirely, John. And the reason why is, and Christians out there, if you're listening, you really haven't taken the time to delve because I delved a lot. I read a ton of books and studied it and came to the conclusion for quite a while there that I was an atheist. You've taken the time to really study Christ, to study the Bible, to really ask the hard questions, okay? Which I believe this is how I look at it. God gave us up here the most sophisticated, complex instrument in the universe, the human brain, right? He gave us the creation. He gave us the word, which is Jesus, not the Bible, and he gave us the creation for us to operate under. And the second we try to put things in a box or put things in categories and try to and then simplify everything, look, we you're dumbing down things and people aren't thinking. So you've thought these things through. You've had your dark night of the soul. I've had my dark decade of the soul, and we've had issue. We've both been persecuted and hurt and all these kind of things. And I look at it this way: like I'm not going to judge you because you didn't say the exact right theological term that a Christian would want you to hear, because they'd want to hear you say Jesus is God, and then on the third day he rose from the grave. That's what I believe. Okay, but I also recognize that just because you don't utter that theological statement doesn't mean that God isn't operating through you and that you aren't exhibiting Christ-like attributes. So it's much more muddy. And like I had a new person who just found my channel today, says I'm not sure where you're coming from because there's a lot of gray area and you need to speak truth to these Mormons. I'm like, well, actually, I'm thinking there is a lot of gray areas, and we need to understand that because it isn't simple. It's very complex. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And, I was at the Sandra Tanner event and there's a lot of Christians there. And I hear rumblings that a lot of them are nervous about me or don't like me or whatever. And I just say, if you don't see me as your fellow soldier, Christians, I want to know what Jesus you're worshiping.
Mm.
I want to know what you're reading in the Bible. If I'm not saying like be okay with me, I'm saying if you don't view me as like a fellow soldier with you, I want to understand what you what you think Christ was about.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say I'm this great guy. That's not what I'm saying. I just want to know, I know what I live my life doing and trying to do. And I'm just saying, I just want to know why I'm not saved. Why do I not meet your criteria for being saved? And not just okay on the margins. I want to know why you guys aren't just like saying, man, John's one of us. He doesn't use quite the same words, but he's like one of us.
Mhm.
Like there's this hesitance, like, oh, well, John, you're not so bad. Like, I want to know why you don't think I'm one of you. Right.
I was talking to a Christian apologist who's based here in Utah a couple of weeks ago, and I went to him. I said, the advantage that I have is that I am not a minister. And I don't have to go to some denominational board to explain what I just said on my podcast because this doesn't fit the party line. But churches are denominations are man-made
Yeah.
institutions, right? And these
And
people
that's what Jesus stood against.
exactly.
So, like,
Yeah, that's my whole point is that this pastor acknowledges that like yeah, like I'm limited to how far I can go and say
I
things,
know.
and that's why they can't give you that, they can't say those things to you. But this is the other thing, folks. I don't think anybody has the right to go to somebody and say you're saved or you're not saved.
Totally.
That
Jesus
is not your
literally
place.
said, judge not.
Yeah,
Literally
exactly.
said that.
Yes.
Like, you can't argue with that. Judge not. So cut that shit out.
Exactly.
I don't even like to swear.
Yeah.
Cut that shit out,
And we're keeping that in. We're keeping that in, folks. We're not cutting that out.
And by the way, I don't judge Christians. I think Christians are beautiful. Like
Oh, yeah.
RFM said it, but I thought it too. Like, man, if being a Christian makes you want to be kind and loving, and by the way, Chris Thomas,
Absolutely.
you, Randy, Allison, Sandra, there are some amazing Christians who just all they do is say, how can I do good today? And like if Christianity is what informs that, I'm not taking that away from anyone. I'm saying more cowbell, more Jesus.
Okay,
You know what I
amen.
mean?
Preach it. Okay, this is the thing. I totally agree with you. And John, I mean, it really, I see all these other Christian apologists who are just trying to basically just win arguments and show how smart they are. And dude, I'm talking to some of these guys, and they don't have a clue what they're talking about when it comes to Mormonism. They're so superficial in the doctrines and everything like that. So they haven't they not only have they not taken the time to examine their own faith, they haven't even taken the time to examine Mormonism. And that's why I
Yeah.
feel like what I'm doing is doing something completely different, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to have these real adult conversations rather than these stupid petty arguments. And I think that what you're doing with your channel is we're having these adult conversations and you're talking to everybody, and whoever would you would love to have love to have everybody come on your program. Now, unfortunately, because of where you're at, that's not where you're at right now because everybody has put you in a category, in a box. And see, that's what I mean. I'm about getting rid of the gatekeepers. And then people say, well, you can't go on that program. I think BYU professors should come on this program and talk to to John's program. And of course, BYU professors come on mine, but they should be coming on yours too, John, because look, I look at it this way. Look at the Catholic Church, okay? They're going to when they were going to canonize Mother Teresa, right? So, okay, we're going to canonize her, but when we do this, we have to have what was called in the past a devil's advocate. So what do? They fly Christopher Hitchens to the Vatican to be the um, person who says, this is why I think Mother Teresa should not be a saint. Now that's a very mature church.
Yeah.
I want to see a church that says, John Dehlin, man, we don't like a lot of what you're doing, but I mean, there are people who are very highly critical of the Catholic Church, and they're still taking communion every Sunday. And I think that that's what I like about Catholicism is that they'll say, "Hey, Hitchin, Christopher, come on our dime and tell us why Mother Teresa is a horrible human being."
Yeah, it's super weird that like all the things I was talking about on Mormon stories prior to the essays are basically what ends up in the essays. And you know, all the things I was complaining about in terms of the church's positions on LGBT people, other than accepting same-sex marriage, the church is now conceding. And all the stuff Sam Young was fighting for about one-on-one interviews and weird sexual questions, now the church is changing. And all the stuff ordained women was fighting for and women and the church is now trying to move towards. And it's really weird that a church that claims to follow Christ can't have the grace to say, you know what, all you people that we excommunicated, that we're now actually following your advice and moving in the direction you were pushing us. You had a lot of good things you were doing, and we got emotional, and we were afraid, and we kicked you out, and we shouldn't have, and we love you, and we're sorry, and thank you for helping us move in a direction we know we needed to move. That's literally what happened. But it's weird that a church that bears the name of Christ can't follow that basic Christian teaching of like apologies, of like, you know, making restitution, saying you're sorry, trying to do better. It's really weird that a church that claims to follow Christ has the position that they will neither seek nor offer apologies, and that they're not about Christ-like reconciliation. Now, having said that, I also want to take a stand for Mormons being Christian because because you meet Patrick Mason and you tell me he's not Christian.
Okay.
You meet Fiona Givens, tell me she's not a Christian. Like Mormons, there are hundreds of thousands or millions of Christ-like Mormons who believe in the same Jesus you do, who are propelled to alleviate suffering and to be kind and to do good in the world. And I don't think evangelicals or Protestants or any branch of Christianity like has a leg up on acting in a Christ-like way when we're talking about the rank and file members of the Mormon Church. And so, you know, once David Baccavoy got super mad at me because he felt like because of a thumbnail I issued that said from Mormon to Christian. I think it was Randy. It was your interview. He got super mad and like, how dare you say that Mormons aren't Christian? Like, I I believe that if 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 Christians exist, many Mormons qualify. Just like many evangelicals probably don't qualify. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, so I just want to go on the record and say if Christians exist, many Mormons qualify, even if they still hold space for Joseph Smith of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is because you have these creedal Christians who just basically say you have to recite the creeds. That's what makes you a Christian, and that's not really that's a man-made idea because the Bible doesn't say that. You know, I would say I could recite the creeds, generally be in agreement with them, but and so in some people's minds that would make me a Christian. But see, again, there's all these outside things that have been added on since Jesus's time that define what you are as a Christian. And I do think, like, when Christ says you need to give away all your possessions to follow me,
Yeah.
right? Nobody's doing
No,
that, right?
no.
So we have to take these things into account as
Yeah,
well. The
yeah,
one thing I will say, though, too, is folks like now, what you had described about all these things and how the church has changed, you could argue that this is a type of reformation. Uh, Catholics, you need to remove the excommunication of Martin Luther.
yeah, yeah,
That would be the ultimate thing that you
yeah,
could do
yeah.
because he helped reform that church as well. So that's one how I would look at it is that, yeah, rescind the excommunication of Martin Luther. And I also think that, because again, all these are institutions that are run by men primarily, and whether it's evangelical, whether it's Catholic, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and all these different groups, we have to have some humility about what it what we do know and what we don't know, um, about Christ and his teachings and about the historicity of all these things. We have to be humble because, like Paul says, we all look through a glass darkly. And so, because of that being the reality, I mean, it's like, yeah, we just need to be humble in our approach. Try to follow Christ, try to exhibit Christ-like attributes, be humble, and just say, you know what, I'm just going to try to love somebody today. I want to listen to somebody. Because, this is the thing, people don't listen to other people. And I didn't realize it until I started my podcast, because I know all these people and I know all their stories. And then I start telling them what I'm doing and they're not interested. They don't want to ask, like, what's the name of your channel? They don't even ask about it. So I recognize, like, most people are so caught up in their wrapped up in themselves. And that's the problem, is that you're so doing so much navel gazing that you don't see the person on the side of the road that your dad saw.
Mhm.
See, that's the thing. So you need to open your eyes to your fellow man, human, and love them. And I think that's what it's all about. So these Christians, they have blinders on, just like a lot of what we would criticize, members of the Church of Jesus Christ
Yeah,
have
I
as
seem
well.
to remember a scripture in the New Testament that said pure religion. This is King James,
Yeah.
Bible, but pure religion before God is to feed the hungry and serve the poor. Like that's pure religion. I think.
I
Do
mean,
you know
that's
the?
yeah, I mean, that's but look, foundational to Christianity is to be a friend and to love your neighbor.
Yeah,
No greater love
yeah,
than to give your life for a friend.
yeah,
Well, guess what? There are atheists in foxholes. There are atheists who gave their lives for probably their fellow Christian soldiers by landing on that grenade.
yeah,
So that atheist's last act
yeah,
was to give his life for a friend.
yeah,
So I'm not going to sit in judgment of these people.
yeah. Beautiful. So back to your question about the resurrection of the cross. Like I did, so I don't know if implicit in your question about what happened on the cross was, did Jesus die and then resurrect
Yeah.
after 3 days? Is that kind of what you're
Well,
asking?
I think that we start at the cross, right? I know that you guys also guard Gethsemane. We can, but I think the cross is central. The cross is central to Christianity, right? It's the central, what happened at the cross, the sacrifice that he gave. And we believe as Christians that he did die and then he rose from the grave. I mean, I know you probably wouldn't make that statement.
Okay, here's the deal on that, right? And this is again why I will never identify as atheist or agnostic,
Okay.
right? Because while I can't say that I know if Jesus resurrected, if I said that, it would be a matter of just like what stories I was exposed to in my life and then what social pressure I experienced to believe that story, and then what emotions I felt, which are easily manipulated. Like, I can't say whether Jesus resurrected, but I'll never say that it didn't happen.
Okay.
And I'll
That's fair.
never try and convince people that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll ever be able to hear once on Mormon stories where I'm like, Jesus never got resurrected. Like Jesus doesn't exist. I don't think you'll ever hear me say that, because I don't think I've ever
You'll
said
have
it.
people come on and say it and give like why that, like a John Larson or something like that. You'll give them voice to that. But you're saying that, hey, I want people to say, if Jesus, they don't believe Jesus rose from the grave, that's what their beliefs are. So don't confuse who you have on your program is necessarily being your
No,
beliefs, right?
like I've had Terrell Givens, I've had Joe Tippett, I've had tons of Christians, and I just believe in interviewing lots of people to get lots of different points of view. But yeah, don't confuse that with me advocating for one point of view or another, because I will never say that Jesus wasn't divine, or that Jesus didn't resurrect, or that there is no God, or that there is no afterlife. But what I will say is I will say two things. I don't know, but I hope.
Yeah,
I hope.
that's the
Do
hope.
I want to?
Yeah.
Do I want to continue living? Do I want to live forever? Yes, I
Yeah.
do. Okay. So if I'm just totally subjected to my confirmation bias and my motivated reasoning, then I'm a Christian, right? Yeah, hallelujah. We all get resurrected and I'm going to live forever. The problem is, I'm trying to be honest and
Yeah.
say, I'm waiting for evidence
Yeah.
that's compelling enough for me to really go with that, because I've been
Mhm.
fooled before,
I
right?
understand. I get where you're coming from.
So it's a question mark, and it's I would even say it's a hope. It's a hope that when I die, I live on. And if Jesus did resurrect, and through him I'm able to resurrect and live on, I'm going to be the first one that's excited.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Right.
I'm not sure. I hope. And is that faith? Hopefully that would qualify as faith.
Mm,
But I'm not sitting around. See, the one of the problems I have with Christianity is how it's been used to oppress the poor and the vulnerable, to say to them, do all these things we want you to do so we could extract money and time and labor from you to make corporations and businesses or churches or countries more wealthy,
mhm.
and your life is a crap hole, but it's okay because when you die, everything's going to be golden paved, angels and jelly beans and lollipops and choirs. Like, I and I don't like putting off joy to sit in oppression right now.
Yeah.
And I don't like saying screw the earth and screw the mortal existence and the problems, because we're all going to die and Jesus is coming soon and it's the afterlife that matters.
Yeah,
Because there's also a chance that this is the only life we get.
that's right.
And so my focus is going to be on this life and what's here.
Yeah.
So I spend very little time worrying about the
Yeah,
afterlife
okay.
and even fearing my death
Mhm.
or wondering if Jesus was really resurrected. Because as Jesus said, something like, for the evil of today is sufficient. I'm misquoting him, but like he said something about take no thought for tomorrow,
Mhm, mhm,
for the evil of today is sufficient.
mm.
And what I mean by that is the poverty, the ignorance, the polarization, the suffering. It's all right. It's all right here, right now,
Yep.
all over. And one of the problems I have with Mormonism is like, let's go to the temple and do these stupid, empty, culty, Masonic ordinances that supposedly dead people may or may not accept, when there's literally like people starving and people can't read and people that are being abused and poverty and injustice and war and famine. Let's spend a gazillion amount of dollars and 5 million people's spare time doing these dead fake ordinances in these opulent buildings that Jesus would have raged against, while all around us is homeless and illiterate, abused, poor, starving people.
Yep.
Makes no sense at all. And so, like, I never liked that.
Mhm.
I don't like a Christian emphasis in the afterlife
Okay.
if it takes any time or money or effort away from the problems that exist right now.
Yeah, okay. And I get that, dude, because within the Christian context, look, you have these conquistadors who they made sure before they bashed the brains in of those children that they got baptized first, right? So I recognize.
That's so awful,
I mean,
man.
just think about that, right? That's Christian. That's my heritage, right? And so that's the world. And again, and Protestants, man, you guys did some nasty things too. Okay, so let's not pretend that we weren't just SOBs as well. Okay, so because I think it's only fair that when you criticize the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, I think you criticize all the institutions, all the churches. That's why I never joined. I'm a baptized Christian, but I never ever joined a church because I think we're missing the point in that regard. Like I tell people, I don't care what building you go to on Sunday morning. Do you have a personal relationship with the Savior? And what does that mean? Well, it means, does your interaction with the Savior mean that motivates you to do the very things to go out there and help the poor, help those that are suffering, help that transgender child who's been thrown out of their parents' home, Christian home, I'll add, right? So this is the thing where I look at it is that we just got to show love on an individual level, on a relational level. And that's how Christ operates through you. It's not about how much money you give. It's not about you going and checking off certain boxes. And I'm talking to Christians here. I'm just talking to Christians. It ain't anything about that. Like, what did you do to help make somebody's life a little better today? What did you do to show kindness? Maybe to that clerk at the grocery store who is having a really bad day. Did you treat them with kindness, or did you maybe make their life a little worse because you didn't like their attitude or something, right? So that's the whole thing. Is it's a relational thing. It's a day-to-day thing. And so I got motivated. But yeah, you're right. I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about the afterlife. I'm kind of with you on that, actually. And part is it, and like even like as an atheist, I quit believing in hell. That's one advantage, being an atheist. At least there's not suffering. That's one way of alleviating suffering is there's no hell. I don't know what to do with a lot of the theology because I'm still growing. But again, I think that the idea is what motivates you if you want to help people. And that's why I say you're playing like a ministerial, pastoral role. And I don't know. It's just a fascinating journey that we're both on, I think, John.
Well, it's so fun to be on it with you. I will say, um, I will concede one thing.
Okay.
Like, I am not as kind as I want to be.
Okay.
I am not as grounded as I want to be. I'm not as thoughtful as I want to be. I'm not as meditative as I want to be. I'm not as compassionate as I want to be. I'm not as much of a peace builder as I want to be. And I don't think that secularism is necessarily making that better for me,
Mm.
right?
Right.
And for a long, long time, I've thought two things. I've thought, who are the really kind people I know? You know what I mean? People like, I don't mean to elevate anybody, but like, you or Randy or Allison or Chris Thomas, these people, there are people that are just like, John, how can I help you? I don't want anything from you. How can I help you? You know, like there's this beautiful woman, Emily, I think is her name. Like, I'm super sad I forgot her name. When I moved into my house in Holiday, she's a locksmith, and she's just like, John, do you need keys done? I'm like, yeah. She's like, man, I just love you. Can I? And she comes over and she like does all the key stuff for our new house, and she doesn't charge me. Like, what are you doing? And she's just like, well, I'm a Christian. She didn't say it this way, but she's just like, hey man, I love you, and I just want to do something nice. I mean, it's just like, what? Who is this? What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, there's these people, like, Randy, like I've talked about Randy, like he's the dude that stays behind and puts the chairs away, right? He's the guy that's like running around to lots of different people and saying, hey, let me give you a little financial support. You know what I mean? Let me fly you here. Let me give you my house, or let me, you know what I mean? I'm just like,
Mhm.
who's this guy? What is this? It's just like, they're informed by Christianity. It's their belief in Jesus. And by the way, I'm not dumb. I know that there are atheists and secular people, or Muslims or Hindus or whatever, that are just as kind or more. So I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I'm not as kind as I want to be. I'm not as peacemaking as I want to be. I get angry.
Yeah.
I do sow contention. I get mad at apologists sometimes, or neo apologists, or I just don't sow peace like I wish I did. And I think about, if I was constantly daily thinking about Jesus,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
Like, if I did join a Christian church that wasn't offensive and off-putting to me, and I was attending a church weekly and reading, I don't know, the Jeffersonian New Testament or something, right? And I was just constantly immersing myself in a figure like Jesus daily and had some type of worship, would I be more of the man I want to be? And sometimes I think I would.
Mhm.
And so, it honestly, like when John Hammond and I, way, way back, he's like, dude, what we need to do, we brainstormed and was like, dude, what we should do. We had this conversation. It's like, okay, LDS Church isn't working out. Let's take over Community of Christ and reorient it so that it can be a home for progressive Mormons.
Ah, yeah.
Like, we had that conversation back in
Interesting.
like 2005, 2006.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then he went and did it. I
Yeah.
mean, he didn't do it, but I mean, he's doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
And, and part of me wished I'd kind of joined him, right?
Mm.
But there were
Mhm.
just some things that I didn't feel right to me.
I got it.
But, I wish, I'll say this right now. I wish I could have a Sunday church experience
Mm.
where I'm with people that are cool, people that share my values, who sing together and meditate together and pray together and worship together and do good together and make each other, but most importantly, make me want to be a kinder, more peace sowing individual.
Mhm.
I wish I could have that. And I tried to create it with Oasis, and I tried to create it with Thrive, and I've tried to experiment with secular communities, and we've not come close to cracking that nut.
And I think, because actually I want to be at that place too. I want to attend that service as well.
Let's start that church, Stephen
Well,
Pynakker.
if what if we made a church that made Jesus the center of the church?
Well, is that a real question? Do you want to pursue that?
I'm saying that to me, I don't see a whole lot of churches where Jesus is at the center. That's the problem.
Why is that so hard? Why is that so hard?
Because, man, you know, because we build a building and we have bureaucracies, and this is endemic in all churches. Is it's the same thing played out all the time. And I say,
Isn't it weird that in 2,000 years we can't figure that out, though?
yeah, that's the thing. That's why I look at all this stuff as a lot of it's just all man-made stuff.
And won't we fall prey to the same things that other churches do if we start our church, Stephen?
I if we start our church,
We'll be different.
That's a great question. And I have some ideas in my head of how you could set something up that makes sure that Christ is at the core of it, and then you keep out all the other nonsense. Like there will be no flags in our church, or if there's going to be flags, all the flags are in the church. You understand? Like, in other words, it has to be inclusive, but it's also here. Like, folks, we're here to worship Jesus this morning. Actually, one of the groups that is most interesting to me is the Church of Jesus Christ of Bickerton Tonight people, because um, I've attended their services and I never heard any politics talked. People stand up, they give testimonies about how they love Jesus and how it's changed their lives. It's a very Christ-centric church, and this is a church that Joseph Smith founded. So to me, it's almost like there's ways of doing it. And I also think that there's probably these small storefronts. There's Jesus probably shows up at those churches too, in those areas. So there are places that just love Jesus and they want to worship him. But the thing is, they're tiny. They're not very popular because people like to go to the prestige church. They actually like the fact that their pastor lives in a mansion and drives nice cars. That it's such an American materialistic thing. That's why I never could feel comfortable in many churches in America, because I just don't see a whole lot of Jesus there. So, yeah, I don't know. I can't go on camera and say, yeah, okay, John Dehlin, let's start a church. But I don't know if that's where the Lord wants me to be. But I also say the Lord should, 6 months from now, I could be doing something completely different. That's the other thing I want to mention to you too,
Okay,
John.
wait. Can I
Yeah,
respond
please
to
do.
that?
Yeah, yeah, please
Will
do.
you put a pin in whatever you're about to
Yep,
say?
sure.
Okay. So when Margie and I knew that Mormonism wasn't going to work out for us, there were two 1 year periods where I went inactive and then reactivated. And then once the church excommunicated me, um, we were like, we had been conditioned to believe, how can you raise healthy moral children without a religion? Like, so we attended for sure an Episcopalian church, like a Presbyterian church. We did a Quaker thing. We attended a Unitarian church, um, probably, and Community of Christ. And none of them felt right for me. So like the Episcopalian church felt too old, high churchy, um, it too Catholic, and I'd been conditioned to think Catholicism was evil, so like it felt too Catholic-y, even though I thought their theology was more progressive. The Presbyterians, just it felt like a dying church. Um, uh, the Quakerism was cool, but you just sat silent, and that was the most excruciating hour of my life, was just being silent for an hour,
Mm,
not listening to anything and not saying anything. Like, shoot me now. I think there's value in that, but it was just aversive to my existence.
sure.
Um, but I attended the Unitarians,
Mhm.
and it felt like a political rally.
Yeah.
And even though my politics, I think I have some conservative political views and some progressive, but because of largely being informed by a Christian upbringing, like my support for the LGBTQ community and for women and for other things lead me to kind of sometimes be a social progressive or social liberal.
Mhm,
And that's informed a lot of what I do. Uh, Even though that's kind of where my social politics lie, I think fiscally I'm more conservative.
mhm,
Um, Militarily, I'm progressive because I hate war, and I
mhm.
think Jesus did too. And so and that's complicated. But anyway, even with all that, I don't want to go to a church to have politics. I don't want you to, I don't want this to be a fundraiser for like global warming. That's
Yeah,
not why I'm going to church.
that's right.
I don't want even if I support the politics, for some reason, having politics intermingle with church just felt gross to me.
Yeah.
So Unitarians didn't even work. And then
Mhm.
Community of Christ, like I love Stephen Veazey. He's
Mhm.
one of the most spiritual, righteous people I feel I've ever met. Wise and smart and kind from what I saw.
Mhm.
Could be a facade, but like that's what I experienced.
Yeah.
But how do I be in a church that's built on Joseph Smith?
Right.
I wouldn't be in a church built on Jeffrey Epstein or Keith Raniere. Like, no, that's a hard no.
Mhm.
That's a non-starter for me.
Mhm.
Even though I know Joseph Smith did good things and had good intentions and was a complex guy.
Mhm.
Can't build a church on Joseph. So as much as I love John Hamer and respect Community of Christ, so like, but then if you just strip it down to just a Bible church, there's these things. There's the fact that in the way the world thinks about things, Christianity is one world religion that is not all in. It exists sort of um, in a separate place than secularism or Judaism or Islam or Hinduism or pick all the other world religions. And then you add to that it's separate from all the others, plus Jesus saying, I am the way and the truth of the light. No man cometh to the Father but by me. Narrow is the gate and few there be that find it. Exclusive. I don't like exclusion. I don't like anything that says we're right and you're wrong. We're in, you're out. I don't like that garbage. Like I know Jesus said it, but I don't like it. I want a theology that's like we are all in this together, period.
Mm.
Period. And I don't know how to be a Christian in a way that doesn't immediately trigger or pull or denote or connote that other people are wrong and
Yeah.
are in the wrong path. And I don't want to be a part of anything that sort of like immediately signals we're right, you're wrong.
Oh, I
And I
agree.
don't know how to engage in Christianity without that baggage.
Mm. Yeah.
I know there's ways to redefine Christianity so that it encompasses the world.
Mhm.
But even if you do that, even if you do a neo-apologetic Christian progressive reinterpretation of words so that Jesus means everything and God means everything and Christianity means the world and everybody's Unitarian universalistically included in that, to the rest of the world, it still means exclusivity.
Mhm.
As soon as you say, I'm a Christian.
Mhm.
And I need to solve that problem. I need someone to help me solve that problem if I'm going to say I'm a Christian.
Mm. Yeah.
Because
I get it.
I'm sick of the divisiveness. Now, that's going to be, people are going to say that's weird because they're going to view me as one of the most divisive people. But the truth is, I don't like divisiveness. But I also believe in standing up for truth and against oppression. And so I'm stuck in a conundrum.
Yeah.
But I'm sick of divisions. I'm sick of the polarization. Political polarization in the United States drives me crazy that we can't agree on. Wait, is the vaccine a real is COVID a real pandemic with a real vaccine that helped keep us all from dying? Or is Fauci the most evil person on the world and it's all a fake and it's a money grab from corporations and it's a fake disease that didn't exist? Like 40% of America thinks one thing and 40% of America thinks the other. And those two positions couldn't be farther apart.
Mhm.
And same with whether the election was valid or not, or, whether QAnon exists or not. Like
Mhm.
I'm sick of this world
Yeah.
where super large groups of people have totally different perspectives on reality and can't agree on even fundamentals of reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm with you, dude.
And by the way, like if you pick those two groups, one of them is a lot more associated with Christianity than the other.
Mhm. I know.
And it's a very problematic of the two groups. It's a very problematic group. Now, both groups
Yes.
are deeply problematic.
Yes.
So I'm not
Yeah, because
I'm
the
not.
secular religion is just as bad as the Christian religion in many ways. This is the thing I told you when I was on your program, dude. I left Christianity. I was an atheist. I come back to the village, and the village is a freaking on fire.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I see the
yeah.
same things that you see, and I identify them as well. But one of the things I stuck the pin in is that you heard a voice in 2005.
Or 4.
I had a spiritual epiphany right around COVID time. I believe it kind of started when watching with Christopher Thomas the interview, and it moved me in that trajectory. And then I had this moment where I had this peace that surpasseth all understanding. When everybody else was in fear and they're panicking, I was at peace. I had all the anxiety, depression, all that was removed from me. I believe that in one sense, John, be prepared to hear another voice. And I think that once you hear that voice again, I think that everything will fall right into place. Where none of it made sense to me before, it didn't make any sense why I did all the Mormonism and everything. But now, after everything looking back at it, it's like, okay, now I get it. You and I identify the same problems. We get pissed off over the same things. And yet, I've gotten to a point. See, I think that we're both in parts of our journey. I kind of reached a part where, okay, I feel the Lord's using me, and just to show love. I
Dude, I
had
see us as fellow soldiers in a
I,
common fight.
I think that we are
Not only
very
fight,
similar.
in a common effort.
Dude, there was a person who commented on your page. I remember this person saying, "I'm Church of Christ." This is, Christian restorationist. And I didn't believe it was possible that you could be gay and a Christian. But after watching Steve's interview, I've changed my mind. And I had people contact me throughout the world, Christians, atheists, Mormons, saying, "You rocked my world telling your story." Well, okay. See, this is how it starts.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, man, I like it. That's called faith. You're
Amen.
showing faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love it.
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, but do we call it Christian? Do we call this thing
I
we're
do.
doing
I
Christianity?
think following Christ, you're a Christian. If you're following Christ, you're a Christian. And you know what? You don't let them define it. You define it yourself. I had Christians say, "Well, you're not an evangelical because you don't check off all the boxes." I'm reclaiming the name evangelical. I'm going to use that label. But I am at the center of me. I am a Christian. Culturally, I'm an evangelical, but I want to have Christ at the center of my life, and that's all that I operate under. And I don't care what you call me. I don't care what you think of Christians. I just want to show the love of Christ in me. And you know what? Atheists reach out to me and tell me how much they appreciate. So I know that a chord is being struck with people, and I think that this is how it happens. Because look at it this way: modern evangelical Christianity is is on a collision course, and it's not heading in the right direction, dude. And I feel like in one sense the Lord has called me because once it's a disaster, once this edifice collapses, we need people like us, like Christians like me, and that will be there to pick up the pieces for all those shattered lives that are going to be happening. Because guess what? The same thing's happening on our side too, John. Exact same thing. And that's why I feel like I was placed at this time. The Lord showed me that the period in the 1990s, somebody told me, I told somebody, I said, the Lord showed me that the period of 2020 to 2030 is going to be called the second great disappointment. Because within all the calendars of evangelicalism, we should be in the second or third decade of the millennium now, based on what all the dispensationalist doctrine that was being taught in the 19th century. Once we get past 2030 and we start keep on going and going, all of the end time doctrines that are being taught in the evangelical church are will become just as much of a joke as the Jehovah's Witnesses end time uh, predictions were. So now we got to be prepared for a post apocalyptic Christianity. In other words, Jesus didn't come when he was supposed to come. And now we have to live in the real world that exists and not this imaginary world that at any moment we're just going to fly away. And I think that's a more adult Christianity.
Amen to that. But so I love that. And let me just give you a metaphor.
Okay.
And this I got from, I think, Richard Worthland, Mormon apostle. So all of us calling ourselves Christian, let's liken that to all of us playing the tuba. You know where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. A big tuba orchestra where we're all playing the tuba. There's super cool things about that. But like a church of tubas. So what about the violins and the percussion
Mhm.
and clarinets? Are they not welcome?
Right.
So why not have a church? And this is basically, I think, what Unitarianism is, right?
Mhm.
It's basically saying, let's have a church of like, call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. And Christians, tubas play an important role. So we want tubas in the orchestra. They're a crucial part of the orchestra, but they're not the orchestra. And everyone's welcome. Call yourself what you want. We need Christians, but we also need Mormons and post-Mormons, and we need Jews, and we need Muslims, and we need atheists and agnostics. And it's a church that's an orchestra, not a tuba orchestra.
Yeah, but the problem is with the Unitarian Universalist churches, it's just a bunch of aged people. It's a dying church.
So
Yeah.
that okay, so what if they just haven't figured out the right formula?
Well, I think the problem is that if you don't define yourself in a certain way and you just let and anything goes, that it just leads to, and again, this is the thing, I'm not about building a new church. I'm not, because these are man-made institutions. I think that institutions that take that position are destined to fail. That doesn't mean that on an individual level we can't have a place where all are welcome. I think that we can do that. uh, I understand what you're saying, but again, I'm not trying to build an institutional church. I think the body of Christ is all the believers that want to follow him, that want to emulate him, and they want to have Christ operate through their lives, even if they don't even know his name. I think that that's who that's got that's those are his people, and I don't know who they are. I just know that when I see fruits from somebody, then I know, okay, that is a believer, a fellow person I want to fellowship with, a fellow worker.
But I think what I have never gotten over
Okay,
is my Mormon upbringing, where
right.
2 or 3 hours a Sunday, I'm meeting with cool people. I've got leaders that care for me. I'm listening to inspiring things. I'm I'm believing that I'm part of a cause. I've got an identity. I'm handed a morality where otherwise I would have probably messed a lot of things up. I've got when my family's struggling, I've got other leaders that are telling me I'm great and that I can do good things. And I've got something that I can believe in and work for that motivates me. And wherever I travel in the United States or even world, I've got friends in that city or town who will literally let me stay in their house, even though they've never met me before.
Mhm.
Right. And education is valued and family is valued and kindness is valued. Like that was awesome.
Mhm.
That Mormon dream. Now, of course, there was the patriarchy, but that didn't bug me so much. Wonder why.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Um, the homophobia was awesome, but again, that didn't bug me so much.
Right,
The racism was annoying, but didn't bug me that
right,
much.
yeah,
Like I'm joking, but
right.
like, of course, there were the major problems,
Mhm.
but like that was a pretty awesome model, dude.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why the Mormon church hasn't collapsed in the age of the internet is because it's still adding value to people's
Yeah,
lives.
yeah.
And if it wasn't adding value to people's lives, they'd bail.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
So my point is I still want the orchestra, bro.
yeah,
I want to go to church with you dudes and
yeah.
cool women and non-binary people and awesome. I want a Sunday experience
Mhm,
where I'm singing with my fellow homies, inspirational things that make the hair on my arms stand up.
that's right.
And I'm hearing a sermon not about stupid like authoritarian garbage, but like, hey man, I helped people and this is how it made me feel better. And you should help people too. And hey, I was struggling with being kind, and here's some things I learned.
Yeah,
And now I'm more kind.
yeah.
Try this thing out.
Mhm,
And like, when my kids are feeling lonely or struggling or want to meet somebody, when my kids want to meet somebody to find a special someone in their lives, they can go to some activity, dances and picnics and meet cool people and find their mate
mhm,
or their special someone and build a happy, healthy life from there versus like trying to figure that out through social media apps.
mhm.
Like, I just think we've lost something. I don't know that like doing a bunch of podcasts and like random one-off meetings through social media, I don't know that that's going to get humanity where it needs to go.
Mm, mm.
I guess I still believe in the church model in many
Okay,
ways.
yeah, I can see. Well, there's utility in the church model. I can see that can do a lot of good. I'm just saying is that as we go into a postmodern world, people are leaving institutions altogether, right? And they don't even ask the question, "What is the true church?" That's not even something anybody even cares about anymore. So as we are in this postmodern world, we're going to see a radical transformation of how people view their religion and how they engage it. So I look at it this way: is like I helped create my own community. Like I stayed at a friend's house last night who's a Mormon, and I've been able to do that in some level, on a small level. But I think that we can all build intentional communities, and we can. And then again, these what we're doing in this world is building those communities. Now I know, like you said, you did Oasis and you did Thrive. I thought Thrive was doing really great. You had thousands of people there, but you've told me, there's been issues and problems. But then, again, that's because there always are going to be, because we're men, in particular men, and we tend to screw things up, and we tend to just mess it up. And so that's why I kind of look at it as just try to be grounded. Like I said, I believe it's Christ operating through me, and I think that's what led me into this whole endeavor. And that's all I can say. I can't really go to you and say much more than that, dude.
And I want to build a secular slash spiritual slash religious megachurch that, like, every town, it's like Rick Warren,
Yeah.
but he's good with everybody, but it's also Rick Warren and their spouse and non-binary and
Mhm.
trans partner. Like, I want like this combination new age secular spiritual religious megachurch that, like, come one, come all,
Yeah.
find love, teach the gospel of kindness and service and charity and love and community and friendship and goodness, and and let's sing together and have potlucks and bring potato salad or
Yeah.
cheesy potatoes with cornflakes on them or jello, whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Bring your treats,
Yeah. I
have
get where
youth
you're coming from.
programs and,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
golden green balls and everything
Yeah.
without the
Absolutely.
bigotry.
Okay.
Why can't we have that?
You
Come
want
on, man.
Yeah, okay, you want Mormonism in your own image, right? No. I get what you're saying, and I understand that, because I know that most people have a need for community, like an institutional community, a place that they can go to every Sunday, and I get that. And I think that it's just more I think it's important. I look at it this way. In one sense, if you have a personal relationship with Jesus and you're grounded with him, then you can go anywhere, any Sunday, and still be in communion with him on a personal, individual level. And so then you just don't let that bishop, that pope, that pastor, or whatever get in your way of having that relationship with Jesus. And that's kind of how I look at it. That's how it works for me. But I recognize I'm kind of a iconoclastic individual. I do my own thing, and I understand that. Um, John, I promised you that this interview is only going to be a couple hours long, and I know that you are traveling, so I want to wrap this up out of respect for your time, because I know we could easily go
I'm
another
having
two.
too much fun, bro.
Okay, well, okay, well then we'll.
I can go 3 more minutes, but I also
Okay.
know that not everyone's into super long form. So, dude, we can do this. We can, like, have a part two another time too. So whatever you want,
Oh, you want to do a part two?
dude. I love this stuff, man.
Okay.
The question is, would viewers and listeners even care?
Well, remember, it's my show.
That's right.
We're using your studio. It's my show.
You can do what you want.
Okay, so we're just gonna produce on the fly here.
All right.
John, I want to thank you so much for coming on Mormon Book Reviews today.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for what you do, and thanks for being my friend more than anything else. But also, thanks for being a place that can live out the Mormon Stories vision maybe a little bit more than I've been able to, which is a place where Sandra Tanner and Richard Bushman both feel comfortable appearing. That's what I always wanted Mormon Stories to be. And I'm thrilled that you're creating that space along with Rick Bennett, and hopefully others will too. And so thanks for what you bring to our community.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. I was going to ask if you had any final words for my audience, but I think those are good final words, unless there's anything else you'd like to say.
Yeah, man. Help me write a book.
Okay.
Please. I'm being held captive by my podcast. Help me write a book.
I think that this is the episode that launches the John Dehlin book, folks. You watch out for it.
And
Okay.
then do you promise a Mormon book review episode on my book if I write a book?
And I might even let you come on my show to talk about it. How's that?
All right.
A couple of things, folks. I first of all, I want to thank John again for coming on the program. I just want to point out that I wore this Joseph Smith for President T-shirt. I bought this at the Red Brook store in Nauvoo, Illinois. I have to give the Community of Christ a shout out because freaking we had John Hamer come on and Lachlan McKay, an apostle and a direct descendant of Joseph Smith, come on and do the very first interview for the Joseph Smith photograph. So I have to honor Community of Christ. I do think you're awesome. I don't kind of go for your whole progressive liberal thing too much, and your church services are a little too, I don't know, I'm charismatic. So I like, I like us, I go to churches where people roll on the floors. But either way, Community of Christ, you're awesome. And John Dehlin, you're awesome.
Thanks, man. You're
And
awesome.
thank you. And so just want to remind you to like and subscribe and don't forget to hit the notification button for when a new episode comes out. I just also want to remind you that we are on all the major podcast formats. There's links in the description so you can check those out. And also, if you want to support our channel on both Patreon and PayPal, there's links there as well. And don't forget our merch store, MormonBookReviews.com. We are adding stuff all the time. So, folks, thanks for joining us for this. And stay tuned for part 2 next time I get out to Utah. Be well.
People, give this guy money. Steve deserves a good, 80K, 100K a year salary to pay for what he does. So donate to this guy. He is worth $10 a month or $100 a month. Support content creators that are doing good in the world. Give him your money. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.